High in the forests of western Georgia stands a marble palace, its grand staircase swallowed by ferns and falling light. It was built not for a king, but for ordinary Soviet workers, one of dozens of pleasure palaces an empire raised across this small republic, then walked away from. From rusting cable cars to a sealed laboratory of monkeys, these are 8 forgotten places the Soviet Union left to rot in Georgia. And they get stranger as we count down. Georgia was the jewel of the Soviet South, Stalin's home republic, with snow peaks on one side and a warm subtropical coast on the other. The Kremlin turned it into the holiday ground of the whole Union and dug deep into its mountains for their riches. Then the empire collapsed and a war tore through its coast. The resorts, the mines, and the secret labs were simply abandoned. We begin at number 8. Number 8, the mining town in the sky. Chiatura sits in a deep, narrow gorge, and beneath it lies some of the richest manganese ore on Earth, the metal that hardened the steel of the Soviet war machine. By the 1950s, tens of thousands of miners worked its shafts, but the canyon walls were so steep there was nowhere left to build and nowhere for the workers to go. So in 1954, on Stalin's orders, the Soviets strung the world's first network of passenger cable cars across the gorge. Dozens of steel cabins carried miners over the rooftops to the pitheads. A whole public transport system that flew through the air. Locals came to call the rattling boxes the metal coffins and rode them to work every day for 60 years. Most of those original cabins have now been switched off, left hanging on their cables or rusting at the stations where the miners once queued. A few new lines still creak across the canyon, but the old Soviet system, and the one that made this town famous, has been abandoned to the rust, swaying empty over the gorge. Number 7, the empire's seaside dream. Down on the Black Sea coast in Abkhazia, the town of Gagra was the Soviet Riviera. Palm-lined promenades, a sweeping white colonnade, and grand sanatoriums drew the powerful and the privileged from across the Union. For decades, a holiday in Gagra was the reward every Soviet worker was promised. This stretch of coast was where the Soviet elite came to play. Khrushchev and Brezhnev kept seaside dachas nearby, film crews shot sun-drenched comedies on the promenade, and the colonnade became one of the most photographed images in the whole Union. To holiday in Gagra was to touch for 2 weeks the glamorous life the propaganda posters promised. Then, in the early 1990s, war came to the coast. The tourists vanished overnight, and many of the grand hotels were left to crumble in the salt air. Today, the white colonnade still stands above an almost empty shore, its arches framing a turquoise sea that the crowds never came back to. Number 6, the grandest railway station no train reaches anymore. In the Abkhaz capital, Sukhumi, the Soviets built a palace of a station in 1951. Marble floors, chandeliers, ornate towers, and a vaulted hall to welcome the holidaymakers streaming down to the sea. It was the glittering gateway to the entire Soviet Riviera. After the war, the trains stopped, and the station was simply left open to the weather. Inside the Great Hall, paint peels from the ceilings, fig trees push up through the platforms, and vines climb the cold chandeliers. The grandest entrance to the Soviet South now stands silent, slowly turning into a greenhouse. Number 5, a model city built on coal. High in the Abkhaz mountains, the Soviets carved out Tkvarcheli, a showcase town for the men who mined the coal that fired Georgia's factories. Stalinist boulevards, a theatre and a cable railway climbed the hillsides, and at its peak more than 20,000 people called it home. Then the war of the early 90s closed in, and Tkvarcheli was cut off and besieged for more than a year. Food and medicine had to be flown in by helicopter to the people trapped inside. When it was finally over, most of them were gone, and the town never recovered the life it had lost. Today, only a fraction of the people remain. Whole apartment blocks stand dark and roofless. The grand staircase to the upper town leads nowhere, and goats graze in the squares where miners once marched on May Day. The coal still lies under the hills, but the model city the Soviets built on top of it is mostly a memory. Number 4 lies just up the valley, and it's the ghost town at its purest. Akarmara was the mining settlement above Tkvarcheli. Elegant apartment blocks, balconies, and a cinema set against waterfalls and forested peaks. In its heyday, it was one of the most beautiful corners of Soviet Georgia, a small alpine city hidden in the Caucasus. When the mines closed and the war emptied the valley, almost everyone left. The subtropical forest moved in fast. Trees burst through living room floors, ivy drowns the balconies, and bears wander the streets. Today, a mere handful of residents remain among the ruins. The last people in a town the jungle is steadily swallowing whole. Number 3 is the strangest of them all, a laboratory of monkeys. In Sukhumi, the Soviets ran an institute where thousands of apes were bred for medical and military experiments, and some were trained for the space race sent up toward the edge of space. The town grew so proud of them that it raised a monument to the laboratory monkey. When the fighting reached Sukhumi, the institute was abandoned in chaos. Its cages were broken open or simply left, and in the confusion, many of the animals escaped into the hills or starved behind locked doors. The halls where the Soviet space monkeys were once trained now stand gutted and empty, their grim experiments left behind. Number 2 is the one Soviet giant too important to abandon. On the Enguri River, the empire raised a colossal arched dam, over 270 meters tall. For years, one of the highest dams on the planet, and a monument to Soviet engineering at its most ambitious. It took more than 20 years to build. Then the war drew a line straight through it. The dam now sits in Georgian-held territory, while its power station lies on the Abkhaz side, a single Soviet machine split between two governments that barely speak. Yet it still hums, because both sides depend on its electricity. It is the one thing here too vital to let die. And number 1, the lost city of palaces. Back in the western foothills lies Tskaltubo, the spa capital of the entire Soviet Union. Around its warm radon springs, the Kremlin built a ring of more than 20 vast sanatoriums, colonnaded, domed, and chandeliered, set in manicured parks. Trains ran here directly from Moscow, carrying the workers of the Union to be healed. Even Stalin came to take the waters here in a private bathhouse built just for him, its pool ringed with marble and guarded around the clock. For the ordinary Soviet citizen, a stay in Tskaltubo was the ultimate prize. Living proof, they were told, that the workers' state could build a paradise of its very own. Then the Union dissolved, the trains stopped coming, and the springs lost their patrons almost overnight. The great sanatoriums were left to the damp and the dark, their ballrooms silent and their fountains dry. The paradise the empire had promised was switched off and walked away from, all at once. But the palaces did not stay empty. When war drove tens of thousands of people out of Abkhazia, many of them fled here and made their homes inside the ruined sanatoriums. Today, families still live among the crumbling grandeur, like hanging their washing between marble columns and raising children in the wards of a forgotten empire's dream. Inside the grandest halls, though, the forest is winning. Saplings rise through the parquet, vines pour down the marble staircases, and shafts of light fall on frescoes no one will ever repair. A spa built to last 1,000 years for the workers of the world is slowly, quietly returning to the Georgian hills. 8 places where an empire built its paradise, dug for its riches, and hid its secrets in the mountains of Georgia. Then left them all to the forest and the rust. The Caucasus is taking them back, one palace at a time. Next time, we head north to the Baltic coast, to the secret missile bunkers the USSR buried in the forests of Lithuania. Subscribe and we'll take you behind the wire.